welcome to the beginning of the Raumwelten Festival, VR Hub Festival. Um, so thank you for coming. And I just want to explain to you a little bit about Ola, our first speaker. Um, well, actually, I came across Ola partially because of when we first came up with the concept for this year, which this world is actually designed in part, or at least inspired, designed in part by Midjourney, which is an AI program that helps create visuals and concepts. So this was actually part of the main approach for this festival this year. It was a big part of our inspiration, and this idea of how technology could be used in a way to inform design, to help us think about new possible futures, new possible architecture. The avatars that you see are actually, they were fed through Midjourney as well. They're based on the Bauhaus ballet, if any of you guys know that as well. So that's why it kind of looks a little bit familiar, but also a little bit off. And after we had published the concept, I was directed to Ola, who is actually based in Ludwigsburg, of all places, which is amazing,
Hey.
and on this graduation project that he did. So, and his graduation project I found was super interesting because he was looking at machine learning and the same kind of language to inform design, but kind of looking at it from a critical angle. So I thought it'd be amazing to have him here to kind of explain how he uses this tool that, you know, is still quite new, but you might have seen like DALL-E and Midjourney and other ones. It is being used more and more in creative fields, and you know what things come about it and what things that aren't working come about it. So without further ado, here's Ola. I give the floor to you.
Hold on, can I explain you some rules? So, Ole, would you like that we can interrupt you for questions, or
Yes,
will they
please.
come
I would
later?
love to.
So
If you
please,
have any thought or a question or just wanted to add something, please just. I
okay.
think we said raise your hand, like with this React feature.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. In React, you can raise your hands and close it, and otherwise, as soon as we did not give you the permission to ask a question, please keep your microphone mute. And with these rules explained, I'm happy to see you all here for the first presentation. And Ole, you can take over now.
Yeah. Thank you for the. Sorry. For this great introduction. Shortly to me. Um, Mainly, I'm going to present my bachelor's project, Ultra Kurzzeitreligion, in English, Ultra Short Time Religion, um, which is about a digital fashion concept, which is asking the question of the longevity of this text to image AI models. Surely, so we all on the same level. Digital fashion just describes fashion which is not physical there. So it's like our avatars in this Mozilla Hubs room. And as Alison also already ripped on, what the part of text to image is the idea you give it a text prompt and you get a generated image, or for example, DALL-E 2, DALL-E Mini, and Midjourney were the three big which I interacted with because it was at the time where I created my bachelor's project. These were the three that was the most relevant. So today you might add a stable diffusion or something. Right, I did my bachelor's project in Ravensburg in media design, and currently studying motion design at the Film Academy in Ludwigsburg. So I wanted to encourage you to just follow me into this room. So first of all, what I did was like, uh, this is, can you hear me all right? And
We can hear
so,
you. It's all
yeah.
good.
So the main question that I ask is, what if you see a generated image, where, for example, from Midjourney or DALL-E Mini, you always have this feeling. If you saw some of them, you can you see what that is an AI generated image. And I was very interested in exploring what is this look, what is the idea of an or the visual baseline of AI generated images or these specific models of AI generated images. And so first of all, I scraped the internet for images. You see these free flickering videos over here. Like on the right hand, we have images which are created by Midjourney. On the left hand, we have images created by DALL-E 2. And at the top, we have images created by DALL-E Mini. And it's pretty interesting also how, for me, it was interesting not just looking what can I create with those images, but also who is creating what kind of images with these tools. Because at the time where I created those data sets, it was pretty different how you can how you were able to use these tools. So, for example, DALL-E 2 was nearly not accessible for normal kind of people. You had to get a special access, and it was pretty hard to get into. But on the other hand, you had DALL-E Mini, which was like, I think you all saw it to one point. Instagram and Twitter was overflowed with DALL-E Mini images, where you can just use the browser and put an input there, and then just generate some images. So that's also quite interesting, because like it changes what kind of images were created. So if you have like DALL-E 2, which is at the time was nearly only used in a sort of professional way. So bigger artists or established artists could use this tool, or for example, people to generate stock imagery. But on the other hand, you have like, so they were like all like kind of thought out. They were, you could say, a concept behind more of a concept behind DALL-E 2 images. In contrast, for example, to DALL-E Mini, which was more like you wanted to make a quick joke. And that was quite interesting, because like when I curated those data sets or looked through them, you see a lot of pop culture references. You see like Donald Trump with some stormtroopers from Star Wars or something like this, and this all in an also in a more washed and early AI state than DALL-E 2. And then the model which I'm going to focus on today, because as Alison said, it was inspiration for this year's Raumwelten, was Midjourney. And Midjourney is probably the one which has the most specific style, you could say, because like it had, if you have a DALL-E, if you have a Midjourney image, it's always like this. You could call it like a digital painterly look, which you can, if you saw some Midjourney images, I would say you can spot images which are made from Midjourney. Mhm. And so the question for me came like, what is this look? And oh, can you hear me still, or is my
No, you're
Yes.
perfect. Your audio is
okay,
perfect.
perfect? Because the video stopped. Okay, I thought my internet was um crashed. So exactly like the point of asking what is this look, and then I asked myself, what how can I find this, how can I find core visuality of this of such a diverse data set of images which are created. And then because if I just make an look which are the average colors or stuff like that, it wasn't enough for me. So I came across another machine learning technology which called GAN, so general adversarial neural networks. You may know them from like the page, this person does not exist. So the idea behind this is you give this neural network a data set of imagery, and it orientates these images in a latent space or a 512 dimensional room. And now you have the possibility to just take one point in this space and look and generate new images which have like the visuality of the data set. So normally it's used to generate, for example, you have a pretty clear data set like faces, and now you can generate new faces and you can get pretty photorealistic results. Um, but for me, it was interesting because like I said, okay, I have pretty diverse data sets, and these data sets, if I um, if I if I put in really diverse data set in, the only thing that the neural network can create are like the core ideas which are in all of those imageries from the data set. So I use this to generate these images you see over here on the big screen with the flicking through. And we can maybe, with my mouse cursor, we can pause on one. And the idea here was like, okay, I have those images, and for me, uh, what what is the next step? So I there was like kind of the analysis part. I have these images, and you can see the similarity to Midjourney, for example. Like it has like sort of the same color palette, sort of the same way, like shading and texturing. Um, okay, maybe these are not the best. For example, this one. It has like quite an. Oh yeah, I think that's a quite nice match. Like you have like the idea of Midjourney which come through, and also there was like um, and sorry. Yeah, and also it quite came in handy because like my starting data set was like AI and generated imagery. As so like you, if you generate images from a text prompt or like again, you always start with a noise, and so you became because you can see it really nicely in DALL-E Mini. You become you get these really um, washed over, like you don't have clear boundaries kind of images, and so that played in hand with like working with this neural network and the following. And then I wanted to elevate it in the next point, and because I worked with kind of with digital fashion, it was for me the next step getting these generated images and taking some of them and converting them into 3D objects. You can come over here and like take a look, flow through them, and that's the point where like my title of my bachelor's project came into point, because like ultra short time religion oder ultra Kurzzeitreligion is a statement from a fashion sorry from the fashion theory. So it describes really short but really intense connections to something. For example, like a trend, or yeah, probably much a trend, like I don't know, the Y2K look, which is worn at the time. And the question of the work is then like, is mid putting these together, like with the title and getting it to close, is the big question I'm going to ask is, is Mid Journey just a really intense short trend, or not just Mid Journey, but these AI generated images? Is it, and especially these text prompts, is it just a really short time trend, which like, wow, that's new, that's interesting, or is it really something that's going to influence in a broader way and mm, in a different kind of way how we create and design in the future? Um, so we can start this video. And the back, exactly here you can see like all, yes, yeah. Um, so I created like 113 different fashion objects, which are all in this hyper realistic, hyper digital look with this high glossy material. So down here, just for, you always have like the image which is based on the GAN generated image, then also like which model it was based on, and then we have overall the walking animation. And this was quite an interesting part for me as well, like the idea of how can I make an object feel like clothes. um, so I paired it with a walking animation to make it like a cat walk. Like, okay, this thing is worn, um, but also I didn't want to go into the whole part of post-human bodies or digital bodies. So I just left them out, and I think that's a great part about digital space. And I think also like seeing here at Raumwelten, it's quite nice to see some avatars which are not really based on or let's say not physical possible, um, to play with this digital space and the possibility which it gives. Um, so to make a contrast to this high glossy, high digital, high everything kind of look, was excited to use like um, more like nature to contrast all of this. And so if you see over here, like the big rocky thing, there was quite also an interesting topic. Um, what is nature in a digital space, and how do you redo nature? Like, and for me, there were like two core parts of this. Like, first of all, just representing nature, like by just photo scanning some rocks and some real nature, and also like having this photo scanned kind of messy look. If you get close, you see like there's things that are not perfect. There's even not this high, clean, polished look like the digital fashion I presented the Mid-Journey stuff in. And then, yeah, okay, I think I can make a short break, and we can, no, not really a break, but we can go over here and take a look at the final video if you want to follow me. And you have some sound to listen to. So we skip to the start. Yeah, it's all in German. I'm sorry for all not German speaking, but there's not a lot, not much text. And yeah, you get right. You can see like this island where this fashion show is this fashion show is happening, and you um, which is presenting exactly this question, like how um, how every new trend and so is presented on a runway, on a fashion week, and also the aspect of nature, the aspect of the is running in a circle, and also the music is like clear references to um, like quote unquote like normal physical fashion shows. For me also, like how I explained earlier, the idea who is using and how much is it used was quite interesting for me. And so you see in the top right corner of the videos, you see like the date. Oh, I think the video stopped. You see a date and always the name of the model which is presented at the time. And the date is interesting, and this is sort of like I researched how I looked at Google Statistica, how much the given name of the AI model was searched on the given day, and represented this in the digital space in the amount of creatures or fashion objects which are running running around in this digital space. Exactly. So you see like these changes in how many of these objects are there, and which is which is representing how much it was searched at the time. To also see like the idea of, because like for example DALI Mini was pretty interesting in this part because it was shortly very popular. Everybody used it. Like um, you you couldn't get around it if you opened Instagram or Twitter. But then also as rapidly as it came, as rapidly it was going away. So um, yeah, there was like this really short time relation kind of. So could you Nick, have you ever any questions so far, or was something not quite clear about, like especially maybe about the process of analyzing the data sets or something like this? Do you have like any questions? I am uh, I am sometimes I'm just way too deep in and just talk and talk and talk, and no it's quite overwhelming sometimes if you just get pushed into it. Yeah. Are there any questions? No?
Well, I guess from my point of view, Ola, I was wondering if you can share, what are some insights that you learned in terms of like these kind of aesthetics and forums? Has it changed your own aesthetic, or has it played a strong influence, or is that temporary?
Um, yeah, I think uh, yeah, it definitely changed my how I interact with these images, and for especially how I interact with the look um, of how if things have this quote unquote AI look. I'm always at the time I'm more skeptical about this because like for me it was like I would say I started to get connected with like GANs and like AI generated images like at the beginning of the year, maybe end of last year. And so you more and more, and then you had this wave of stuff like just everybody was like, okay, I'm now creating AI art, and this is now AI art. And it was quite interesting because like then I lost the point where I was, okay, that's just interesting because of the look, how it works. Like um and I was at a point where I say, okay, I need a concept, I need an idea behind the AI images, because like I think we crossed the point or crossed the climax where it's just enough to make, okay, we make AI generated images. That's everybody can do it. It's quite, it's not really a point anymore. It's like if somebody is saying, okay, I can make a 3D character, it's like, okay, not everybody can do it, but like such a big group of people can do it, and it kind of lost its visual interest just on its own. So I think that's a big part where it changed. So I got a lot more critical about like those AI arts, and also like a point where, yeah, I can go on it right now, because like the idea how these products work is quite something uh, I get more and more interested in. So like the idea, how does this project, this AI converting text into images, and what is it based on? Oh, there's something I wanted to share with you all, because I think it's quite interesting. I just put a link in the chat. You can take a look at it later. Um, it's like the idea, like for mainly for DALI 2, it's separated into parts. Like you have Clip on the one hand, which is like the language model, which can translate language into images, and then you have like this generative network, um, what is lumen space, latent space, with a lot of images, which can then create these connections of images. And what I just put in the chat is like the whole thing. Oops, the whole thing backwards. So it's, you can put in their prompt or word, and you find which data points or which tag images are used to um, train this language model. And I think that's quite interesting. Mainly, like the big point is like the aspect of code biases, and the idea of like, for example, I mean, a classic for example is, if you put in doctor, you get like a bunch of white old dudes which uh, are tagged as doctors, but like no POC, no women or anything, NBs or so. I think that's something we all have to think about if we use these ideas, these AI models, because like they're not in a vacuum. They're not just generated and now are there and perfect. Um, they have biases. They are trained mainly on images from the internet, which are mainly just randomly tagged from people. So like all these um, all these other things are which we not quite so like the internet sometimes are also in these imageries, or in this idea of this neural network, while creating new images, because like of course they are new images, but they're all based on already existing imagery. So another example is like, if you look for post-human bodies, like there are not really much um, imagery which describe the post or hyperdigital bodies. So there's not really a good way to there's things that's going to change at the time. So maybe post-human body is at the time is already a topic which is broadly considered in these AI models, but at the time of my research, it wasn't so, which is 2 months ago. Um, and so you always have to think about like, what are the boundaries of what this can really create, because like boundaries are this, what is it is trained on. These images aren't not pulled out of thin air, like they are based on something. Mm, So I think that's a quite important part to think about. Besides like um, the environmental causes of like of AI generated images, because like training and again, or for example DALI 2 is like um, it's consuming enormous amounts of energy and resources, which is which I don't want to get into that much, but I think it's always a point where you have to think about uh, what is this tool and where does it come from. I mean it starts as like if you're using Photoshop and you're using an AI model in Photoshop, which is like just auto rotoscoping your object. These models are trained on black and white masks on objects which are created by people. And I think that's a big trap in the parts of like AI generated, because like you have like, okay, I have this AI model, but there's not really a question of like how did we get there? How does this work? So yeah. So absolutely don't get me wrong. I'm pretty excited about working with AI, and I think that's also absolutely interesting tool and to work with. But for me, the main two aspects is like asking yourself like how where does it come from? Are there biases involved in my thing? And also like what is my bigger concept? And like you would also wouldn't say like, okay, I created images in Photoshop. They wouldn't be a selling point. So I think um saying you created images with AI isn't really a selling point either anymore. Yeah, did this answer your question kind of?
Yeah, for sure. I guess I think the thing that I'm really fascinated is, as you said, about what we train these models on. You know, this kind of preconception stereotype types that actually are then fortified through the machine learning. So, you know, being conscious of that, but also it's very quite difficult. How do you change that so that there's less of these kind of biases in the AI, and you know what that means in terms of inclusivity, and also what that it means in terms of you know, pushing stereotypes as well, because it's quite funny, as you mentioned with the doctor, as you have more and more of those images even done by an AI, that actually just reinforces the stereotype. So what can be done in some ways to try to counter that? And it's a tricky question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting because like there was also a paper from the founders of DALI 2, which was about like the aspect of curation, how you say, like curation, so like you're picking images from a data set and cleaning kind of these data set, um, which is like a two-sided sword, like you could say, because like um, you kind of like get better images but doesn't. And because like what is your point? Do you want to get better images or do you want more diversity? Because like this is also a point which is often on one hand of the spectrum and on the other, because like if for example you see like the Jan generated images from my project are like pretty abstract and pretty rough, compared to like this person that does not exist, um, where you have like a pretty non-diverse data set, like not in diverse in the sort of like which people, but more like you only have faces. So there's also always two sides. Do you have more diversity in the set, or do you have more uh, uh, better or cleaner or photorealistic imagery? And that's also a point where I think Midjourney is quite interesting, the aspect of photorealism. And because if you take like, if you don't take in like an arts or an creative um, approach on AI, there's mainly always the goal to create photorealism or realism of some sorts. Like if it, even if it's like kind of like, I don't know, anime characters or Van Gogh paintings. There's always this approach on realism, not so this AI look you kind of have, like this blowing into each other and not having clear boundaries. You may remember these Google images where you look at them and you've been like, uh, yeah, I think I know something, and then you have to describe one thing, and you can't really describe a thing because like it feels like objects, but it aren't really objects. And I think that's quite interesting. And that's also because one point where DALI 2 isn't that interesting, I think, for me, because like you are at this point where you can just create stock imagery and stock footage, yeah, kind of stock footage already, and but I don't think that's really interesting because like now you're just reproducing. Um, I mean, it's a great tool for like, I don't know, a marketing agency who just needs like a happy couple holding a cup of warm hot chocolate. I don't know. But I think for like a more abstract, more creative part, it's more interesting to look at these quote unquote earlier models or earlier adoptions to AI generated images because like um, with earlier I mean like last year or mid this year. I think that's also a crazy point because like the how I mentioned at the beginning, like I worked with DALI Mini, DALI 2, and Midjourney, and now there's like Stable Diffusion, which is like another huge player in this field, and it wasn't there like 2 months ago. And okay, maybe some more, maybe four. Um, but what I want to get onto is like using this AI look as a real like a visual choice. Like for example, like you would also use um, like a more like a hyper realistic 3D look or a low poly 3D look, and really thinking about AI generated images, maybe more like a look worked for me quite well in this past work. So, and then asking from project to project, is this does this look fit to my project, fit to my idea, fit to what I wanted to tell with my design, with my creations. Um, so I think there's a point where it's quite interesting to go back to like those more earlier models. Like for example, I think StyleGAN is pretty still pretty interesting for me because like you have nearly total control. You don't have total control, but you can you make your own data set, so you can choose what is in your data set. You can choose what is the base of your generated images, and so this gives a possibility of like exploring their creative work and using, for example, like using like images from one shot, one static shot of a person moving, and you can use this tool in a different way than like Midjourney, where and you can generate your own imagery. Mm, So to conclude this point, I think it's quite absolutely amazing to have like these tools to create all of these images like with one click, one prompt, or maybe 20 prompts. But also I think you shouldn't be the it should be a tool which you use actively and not just say, okay, I don't have any way to start. Maybe I just make an AI do, can you blah 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 do this and this from this. Um, and also like the point is, I think where it also is getting interesting is if you, yeah, I mean the best a very good example are these avatars we all wearing at the time, which Alison mentioned at the beginning, which are also like I think inspired by a mid-journey tag about the Bauhaus ballet, and I think that's a point where we can really push like the idea of our creative expression or our design choices. If we say, okay, we have this tool, but it's maybe not just one tool in our pipeline. It's just one tool in our pipeline. So we, okay, we maybe start with a 3D model, make a short video, project, and then project our DALI 2 model into this. And so we have much more art direction with other tools than just language. So we can pre-compose stuff and say, okay, use these images to project like a look of um, whatever on it. Or the other way, like um, using an AI model to generate new um, new textures and stuff like this. I think that's the point where it's getting interesting. If you don't stop at the point where I ask an AI and then I generated an image. So if you really take time and take a step before or step after and process your things into more like a thing you want to work with. Yeah. Did that make kind of sense to you, like what I'm referring to? Quite quite interesting to talk in AR because like you don't have like any uh, any reactions of the uh, of the people you're talking to. You you just you're just standing there.
It's true about the audience and when we are all these kind of characters, but everyone is smiling or has their mouth open, so that's also quite funny. Does anyone have any questions? Actually, this is really a good moment now just to kind of dive into some of these things that that was discussed. If you have questions about his process and please feel free to unmute yourself and or you can raise your hand by looking at the react button underneath at the bottom menu. So please feel free. It's like a really part of this is also designed in a way to encourage people to, I don't know, have conversations really about these things because all this tech is new. It's not perfect, but we need to kind of understand and learn from each other in order for us to continue on and making progress in the field.
Okay.
Well, I guess from my end, Ola, I was just wondering, but now based on all the things that you've done and research and such, um, you're still studying, which is amazing because you're. It's so nice to see a bachelor or now a master's student, but exploring these kind of technological things from like the beginning of your design career. And are you applying any of these kinds of research into what you're doing now? Has it influenced or changed your kind of study focus?
Yeah, I think I'm. Uh, I think yeah. I mean, yesterday I just like for for a small what I for example, like I tried now. I have like a small side project for a Christmas party at the office, like making visuals for this, and like there's the idea of like using AI generated images, especially again, and using it as like kind of like a, yeah, sort of like a VJing tool. If you know VJing, like this, if you have an concert and somebody is making those visuals react to music. So maybe not, yeah, it's probably not VJing because it's not going to react to music, but like the idea of using like this, I'm pretty fascinated by the idea of this latent space, like the idea, okay, we have these images and they're like in 512 dimensions, they are connected to each other, and you can just have one vector with like, okay, a vector with 512 dimensions, and walk through this space and using like kind of this space from, I mean, it's also in like DALI 2 or in like the StyleGAN models, you have this, and using these tools not only to like generate fixed imagery, because I'm always interested in like moving stuff, like um, if it's like if it's live reactive or even um, just a video. I'm always interested if it can move. So I think that's a quite interesting part, which I'm going to work on more and more in the future. Um, like the idea using this morphing in between look of AI and this no clear boundaries. I think that's for me the core visuality which is interesting in AI. Um, how I explain, I don't really care about like if DALI can create like 1700s microscope, I don't know, images that, and that in a photorealistic manner. I don't think that's the interesting part. I think the interesting part is like what is um new about this visual style which we didn't have before, like this uncanny, nah, uncanny isn't it really, it's like more like this, it's, I think it makes up a new definition on a new part of the aspect of a digital look. And I think that's the a main part which is pretty interesting at AI look. So because like earlier, like, okay, let's go back like 2 years maybe. If you describe something as digital, it was always like this 3D, and it was like, okay, it's, you don't have it looks kind of uncanny maybe, or it's photorealistic 3D, and now you have like this new kind of look to describe something digital. And I think especially in Midjourney, which is which has this digitally painterly, I don't know, I mean, I worked with it in half a year now, maybe just maybe, yeah, a year nearly, and I don't really have a conclusion how to describe the look, but it's like a new part of digital which is really interesting for me, mm, because it opens new doors. And how I explain, like the interesting part is then how can I connect this with other stuff or other things. And that's definitely the point where I'm going to explore it more and more, and to go to the broader topic. Like I think it's pretty interesting. A lot of uh, things which are more like basic programming, and are now switching to like, or they're coming up like ideas to get them like with neural networks done, or like AI machine learning in a as a whole. Like for example, like uh, some, if we go like the big rocks I scanned were like with a typical photo geometry model. So you like just, you take a bunch of photos and then you how do you say it in English, trigonometry, like the program just figures out where all these points are and generates a 3D model for you. And there's I don't know if you like nerves, also NERF, like are also AI model, which are like more taking more approach of like the human idea of interpreting a space, because like you also give it like some imagery from around some object, but then it's not just taking what is there, but it also like is imagining points are then which are not there, and it's I think that's more it's kind of getting more to the point how we maybe, yeah, maybe sometimes not, but sometimes the idea how yeah, for example, Luma AI, they're also like, I think Luma AI is a paid version. They're also like if you do a bit of code, you can find like the baseline model which Luma AI is. Oh, uh, so another. You can still hear me because like Siri just went off.
No, it's we hear you.
Okay, and yeah, I think that's quite interesting how this whole field of creating digital work is kind of changing in a way, and I think at least you have to not understand, but like connect, interact with it to get a feeling about what it is and if you need it in your workflow. Yeah. Mm. So let me just take a look at my sheet if I forgot something. Mm. Mm. Yeah, which I also like, which I think is quite interesting. For earlier I ripped it on, um, is like the expand in a digital space which we are right now, and how how body is transforming and the idea of body and posthumanism. I think that's also a big part where I'm pretty interesting how like these AI models and stuff like this is going to play a role, but and I think it can go into both sides. Like, on the one hand, we can have like a more freely approach to body and in a digital space, and body also it just can happen that we like use the things we have already kind of pinned down and just transferred in the digital space. So I think that's interesting parts which are coming next, and also like yeah, but I think that's just more like an add-on, like more and more like the idea of not just creating imagery from a text prompt, but also like creating 3D models. But I think that's like, yeah, that's interesting, but we will see how this is gonna affect like modeling, for example, and if it's gonna affect it at all. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We are at the hour, but if anyone has any questions, we can have them here. Otherwise, Ola, if you're okay with it as well, we'll head back to the main space and we'll go up to the arena area and hang out. So if anyone else
Mhm.
wants to talk a little bit more, ask some questions one on one, I will be there. Ola, if you can make it, that would be great.
Yeah.
And yeah, in particular, I'm curious to hear if anyone else has also tried AI as a tool. On a side note, this is I did make actually one of those. This person does not exist to create a fake Bumble account. Which is like a dating app to see what kinds of women or what kinds of people I would attract based on like the certain preconceptions of that. That was just a very strange research project I did on the side, but it's very interesting to see how these things can be used and what kind of influences and affordances it gives. Um, so I want, does anyone have any last questions here actually?
And if I just put uh, my Instagram. If you want to ask me something after this, you can just text me or have like or wanted to say something. I don't know. Uh, um, yeah. So
Yeah.
and thank you very much for having me. Like it was quite a great it's great, but also like a kind of crazy experience, like talking just into my computer and not even seeing like those small Zoom faces. I mean, it's not really a you don't really lose something because like I think it's quite nice to like just because I like to walk around when I talk. Now I just can walk around digitally while talking. Yeah, thanks for having me. Well,
Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming. For those who are interested, you can meet us back in the main space. I'll be hanging up there in the arena. And thank you so much, Ola, for like starting off the festival with a theme that's very much close to this year, and B for also making the space and kind of thinking about how to translate these ideas in a way that's not just a standard Zoom PowerPoint presentation. So I hope you all join us back in the main area. And just make sure to take a look at the program because we have a couple other speakers on today, including Space Popular and Sela Hodent, who is a UX. She's a psychologist and she was a UX designer on Fortnite. So we'll be talking about the metaverse as well, and also civic architecture and designing safe spaces online. So if without further ado, you could head back to the main area actually by a link in the first space where we first spawned. So if we all follow along this path, that's the easy way to go. So that way you don't have to type in a new URL.